Hello friends, welcome to another video. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And I've actually been meaning to make this video for a really long time, but the thought of it kind of stresses me out, so I haven't made it yet. But I'm finally sitting down to make this video because I talk a lot on my channel about having OCD and how that kind of impacts my life and how it affects me. But I've never done a sit down chat about it, kind of explaining my experience with OCD, what it's really like to have it, how I got diagnosed, etc. And so I'm just gonna kind of word vomit on you today, tell you my experience, and hope it comes together in some sort of cohesive video. There are reasons why I haven't made this video yet. Number one, because OCD is this, I don't wanna say it's a joke, because I think people joke about it but understand that it's real as they're joking, but it typically is almost a braggable thing. You know, when people are super organized or they like things a certain way or they tend to be high maintenance, a lot of the time people will just kind of fluff it off as a joke as, oh, that's my OCD, or oh, sorry that my OCD is popping up. And I do that too, but the difference is I actually have diagnosed OCD, and those people don't. So it is used as a kind of joke or almost like a character quality that people assume without the actual diagnosis. And so I think there's a big misconception about OCD out there. And the reason why I haven't talked about OCD in a sit down organized video is because, I don't know, I just don't want to get it wrong. I feel a responsibility to like the real OCD community to like actually shed a light on what it really is, because it is different than just liking things tidy and keeping things really clean or being super particular about things. It actually affects my life a lot more than that, and in a much realer, more significant way than just having things have to be tidy all the time, which is how I feel like people use it as a joke. And to me, it doesn't really bother me. It just kind of is what it is. I do talk about it a lot, and I always make sure to tell people I'm really upfront, and people probably get annoyed because I'm so open about it, but I say, oh, sorry, that's just my OCD. And then I'll be like, but actually like really medically diagnosed, medicated OCD. Like I have to like put the disclaimer in there that I actually have OCD and I'm not making light of a mental illness or anything like that. Another reason that I haven't wanted to make this video is because it's felt a little bit overwhelming to be super real and raw with you and present a less than perfect version of myself and talk about really openly like how my mental health is affected quite significantly sometimes by OCD. It's just a lot to like be willing to open up and talk about it and share it with the world in a way that the world, LOL, my 130 subscribers, you guys are awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. I just want to make sure I'm doing it in an authentic way. And number three reason why I've been really hesitant to make this video is because literally OCD is different for every person. Just like mental health is different for every person, just like everybody's human experience is different for every person, you know? And so I didn't want to speak on behalf of OCD or the OCD community or people who actually have OCD. I just want to tell you about my experience because that's all I know. All I know is how I've been affected by OCD, how it plays a role in my life, and what I do about it to cope and continue my life without it being significantly impacted most of the time. But that's all I can speak to. So I'm not trying to say in this video that, you know, this is what everyone with OCD experiences across the board. No, I don't know what anybody else with OCD experiences because I only have context for my life and my own feelings and my own life experiences. So I'm not here to talk about anybody else's, just mine. All this to say, I'm finally sitting down and doing it. I was gonna like write a bunch of notes and be super organized and prep, but this overwhelming feeling took over and I was just like, nope, I'm just gonna sit down and chat. It'll probably be more real that way. So first, before I talk about like the specifics of how I struggle with OCD and what kind of impact it has on my life, I wanna tell you about my story of discovering that I had OCD. And I'm not gonna get like super into the diagnostic details or anything like that, but I will share a little bit about kind of what led up in my life to discovering that I have OCD and some anxiety generalized disorder as well, and that I needed to do something to cope with it. So from a very early age, I've always been a high-strung person. I would say probably from before I could speak, I was a very high-strung person. I was not an easy baby. In fact, when my parents had my brother Jack, who's second born, I'm firstborn, they were like, I'm sorry, is he an angel or is Miley just the demon from hell? And I think they realized after they had Tatum, my youngest sibling, and she was kind of perfect too, that I was just like in a category of my own when it came to high maintenance and demand, and I'd call it passion, okay? I'd call it a strong sense of self. I would call it decisiveness. I would call it assertiveness. I was a demon child, okay? I was a total diva. I was a brat. I was just hard to deal with. And my parents are amazing humans, and I turned out okay, apparently. I don't know. Do you guys think I did? I don't know. Honestly, some days I still question it. But my mom was a school teacher, and she like read all the books and went to all the like teacher/parent conferences. Like my mom is a hardcore like disciplinarian, like knows her stuff, is an expert when it comes to children. And so I was very lucky to have her as my mom. Thanks, Mom. Because she was super hard on me, but like in a really great, disciplined and structured way. And I think that helped me kind of mellow out as I got older. But probably up until after I finished high school, I just had weird quirks, okay? I had super anxiety when it came to getting picked up from any sort of event or arriving to any event. So my dad would always take me to school in the morning because my mom was a teacher and she had to be at school earlier. And I didn't always actually I never went to the same school that she taught at, weirdly enough. You would think we would, because that would have made it easier, but we didn't. I don't know why. You can ask my parents. My dad is a very loosey-goosey, doesn't really care about being on time. I have since in my adult life totally adopted the habits that he instilled in me from a very early age to not really care about being on time, and I am late almost always. But when I was a child, I had so much anxiety surrounding being late. I hated the thought of not leaving at the exact like 7:33, right when we needed to leave the house and I knew we would be at school on time. Like I pressured him so much. There were always like tears in the morning at least once a week. Like I was just super high strung about needing to be to school on time. And the same for pickup. I had so much anxiety surrounding having to wait like by myself or even with a group of friends for my parents to come pick me up. I just was so embarrassed, like so anxious about my parents not being there right when I got out of school or my activity or whatever it was to pick me up, to the point that I would like, once I had a cell phone, I would pretend to have actual phone conversations with no one if I was left alone waiting for my mom and my dad to come pick me up, so that no one would talk to me and I like could pretend like I was cool and like didn't care that I was like having to sit around to wait to be picked up. But like there was just so much stress and anxiety that came along with having to wait to be picked up. And my mom is probably laughing watching this because she got trained very well to always be there to pick me up. And then if she wasn't going to be there to pick me up right on time, she would always call me and let me know, because I would immediately go to the worst case scenario. Like I would think, oh my God, she's been in a car accident and they're probably all dead. Like I'm going to have to live as an orphan. Like, you know, just all these ruminating thoughts in my brain about worst case scenario situations would happen if my mom wasn't right there to pick me up after school on a normal Tuesday. Like not things I needed to be thinking about, okay? And that also leads me to another big like standout from my childhood that after the fact, of course, once I got diagnosed in my adulthood, I kind of realized, oh, this was probably a symptom showing of OCD. So did anybody else read Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul that were like short stories written by actual kids your own age or around your own age about like significant life experiences? Sometimes they were really happy experiences. Sometimes they were horrible experiences, like losing a parent to cancer or breaking your back and being paralyzed, or just like really significant life-altering events that kids wrote down from their perspective, and this Chicken Soup book put them together and published. I guess just to help like kids connect with each other and like learn that they're not alone even if they're going through hard times. There were like really great themes on bullying and just like they're really great books. Like, I would recommend them to someone who didn't struggle with anxiety and OCD like me, who I love to read. I would just constantly consume these books. I loved them. I loved the stories, but I would read them at such a rapid pace and just consume so much of those stories that it started being really unhealthy for me, because I would obsess over the details, especially of really significant, like, dramatic events the kids would write about, like their parent dying of cancer or, you know, something like that. And I went through a period where I every day woke up and was like, I know today's the day. When I get home from school, my parents are going to sit me down. They're going to tell me my dad has cancer. They're going to tell me my mom has cancer. I'm sure it's stage 4 and they're going to die in 6 months and I'm going to be without a mom or without a dad. And I would just like sit and think obsessively, you guys, like 4 hours in a day about what would happen, what would their funerals be like, how would my life be altered, like how my siblings would turn out because they wouldn't have a mom as long as I did, or, you know, it was just like obsessive, compulsive thoughts about worst case scenario situations. That's something I still struggle with to this day, because guess what? It is a very common kind of baseline OCD thing to have ruminating thoughts or really disastrous thoughts and to obsess over them. So there's a bunch of other examples from my childhood that I could easily come up with right now after the fact that I've thought through for years and years since being diagnosed of, oh, I should have known I had OCD then. But I'm not going to talk about it anymore because this video is probably already going to have to be 2 parts anyway, because I'm just going to talk forever. But I want to tell you about my life leading up to when I was diagnosed. So my senior year of college, I was the interim executive director for a nonprofit in my town that was an office of 2 people, and I was in charge. I kind of fell into that job in a kind of a strange situation. It was great experience for me in the nonprofit field, but it was incredibly stressful. It was kind of a horrible environment. And I got out of there as soon as I possibly could. And that's all I'm going to say on that. I was also, at the same time, I was literally leading a nonprofit organization in my town. I was trying to finish school. I was in my senior year of college. I was also engaged and planning an entire wedding. And Eric and I had just bought a total fixer-upper house that we were gutting from the ground up with my dad and my papa and one of our contractor friends, literally all by ourselves. We were there every weekend working, tearing down this house, doing manual labor, and we all know how I feel about doing manual labor. And I was just absolutely overwhelmed. I was at this point in life where I was being pulled so many different directions. Every like segment of my life had very stressful elements, and I just like fell apart in the most functioning way possible. It's so funny to think back to it, because I could still carry on with my life. I could still be in charge of a nonprofit, finish my degree, magna cum laude, or however you say that. Eric and I planned the most gorgeous, beautiful wedding, and our relationship was amazing. Our house was probably the most stressful part of it, but turned out incredible, gorgeous, wonderful. Another video story time to tell you about that experience and the nightmare we went through of trying to sell it. But that's a story for another day. I was very high functioning. I thought I had it all together. I didn't realize that because I was so stressed and so anxious about all of these different areas of my life that were changing rapidly, that had really high pressure situations, because of all the stress and anxiety that I felt from all of those areas and being spread so thin, I developed some coping mechanisms that were not healthy. For example, I started to have everything in quantities of 5. So the volume on the TV, the volume on the radio had to be in increments of 5. If I saw the TV being turned up to 21, I would freak out and ask the person, whoever it was, can you please turn it down to 20, or can you turn it to 25? Or else I would sit there and think about the volume being at 21 and not being at 25 or 20, and just obsess over that tiny little detail. Another weird thing, if I walked into my bathroom, which was a sliding door, at that point I had to click my heel against the front of my other leg, like my shin, kind of like make a 4 on my feet. I'd show you, but you can't see my legs. Every time I would walk in, or I would have to immediately go back out and do it again to be able to walk into my bathroom. And that kind of developed into more doors that I would open. I would have to click my foot before I entered, and it just became this habitual thing that I didn't even notice I was doing. Another huge fear of mine is driving in the rain. And typically I'm okay to drive in the rain. I don't like it. And I probably need to go through some sort of like immersive therapy, like a lot of people with OCD do, to get rid of their like really crazy fears, because that is such a point of stress in my life. Just like thinking about long trips and weather being an issue. I don't really worry about weather when I'm at home in a safe environment. It's just when I'm on the road driving, or Eric's driving, or, you know, I'm in a car on especially the highway when it's pouring down rain or super icy and stormy. Like, oh, it makes me kind of out of breath right now just thinking about. That's another warning sign of my anxiety, is I start to get shortness of breath, not because of any sort of like actual medical thing, but because of anxiety. That is the number one symptom. When I can tell that I am needing to calm down and settle myself, when I get shortness of breath, I know I'm getting anxious and I have to do something. So it got to a debilitating point with the driving in the rain when like I can't remember what I did, but I had some sort of like coping mechanism while I was driving in the rain that I had to like tap my steering wheel. What was it? Gosh, I can't remember what the actual coping mechanism, like physical thing I had to do while I was driving in the rain to get myself through. But I vividly remember being in the car with my mom and sister. We were driving to Oklahoma City for something, and it was raining, and I was panicked, and I was doing that coping, and I just kind of exploded on my mom. I was like, she was like, "Are you fine? Like, you're tapping or doing something." I can't remember what I was doing. And I was like, "No, I'm not fine. I'm very anxious right now. I'm very overwhelmed. I'm having to do this thing to just cope and get myself through." Like, and I kind of like word vomited to her all the things I was stressed about and all the ways I wasn't doing okay. And it's so funny because up until that moment, I was coping. Like, I was functioning, not high functioning, not functioning well or healthily, but I was functioning in enough of a state that I was just ignoring everything. And for some reason, my mom like noticing and pointing it out in that moment was enough for me to just like word vomit and be like, "No, I'm not okay." And she was like, "Okay, let's do something about this." And my mom kind of pressured me to go to my doctor, and I just ended up getting diagnosed with OCD. And I tried out a bunch of different medication. There's a bunch of different like anxiety type medications. There's a bunch of different levels. Like, they test you out on a couple of the starter levels, and then if those don't work, they test you out on the next level and whatever. So I went through a couple of levels before I found my medicine that I love. It totally balances me out. In fact, my mom, Eric, Tatum, actually my whole family, really, my friends, like, people can tell, like, if I'm being super, like, talking really fast and, like, you know, gasping and just, like, really high strung and, like, stressed out about stuff and, like, wanting to get a bunch of stuff done all at once or whatever, or just, like, going, they can usually tell. Or, have you taken your medicine today? Are you good? So it's gotten to a point where it's very manageable. It's so funny. As soon as I got diagnosed, it was kind of like this big relief of, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not crazy. There really is something wrong with me. That's another thing. A lot of the time, people with OCD or people just with anxiety in general, which I have both, tend to be hypochondriacs. And I am such a hypochondriac, even from like a child. Like, you know, you tend to think worst case scenario. And that's a very common thing for a lot of people with OCD, is we have ruminating thoughts that continue in our brain, and they basically explain worst case scenario. Like, I think about death at least 3 times a day, at least. I think about, like, what if, like, my whole family goes bankrupt and we lose all of our houses, and what would happen? And I just think about any worst case scenario possible. That is a huge indication of stress to me. If I'm stressed in my life, I start obsessing over the worst possible thing that could happen and think about it constantly all day long. Okay, so Maile from the very near future here, realizing that this video is way too long to make one video, so I'm gonna make part 1 and part 2, and I'm gonna end part 1 here. So stay tuned for next time, and I will continue my OCD story for you and flush it all out. in its entirety. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. You guys are awesome, and I so appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. Check out part 2 in just probably a few days, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!